The biting wind whipped Swa's hair across his face, stinging his eyes with flakes of newly fallen snow. Beside him, Red hunched deeper into his fur-lined armor, his breath misting in the frigid air. Their new expedition into the lost colony had led them not to a bioluminescent jungle, but to a vast, frozen wasteland, a stark contrast to any arc biome they'd encountered before. Lost colony indeed, Red grumbled, his voice a low rumble. More like lost in a blizzard. My toes are already questioning our life choices, Swa. Swa, ever stoic, merely adjusted the grip on his ice axe, his eyes scanning the endless expanse of snow-covered peaks and frozen forests. The scout reports mentioned a chilling presence and ancient structures. Looks like we found the chilling part. Their Giganotosaurus, Frostbite, trudged patiently behind them, its massive claws crunching through the thick snow, its breath steaming in great clouds. Even this colossal creature seemed wary of the oppressive silence that hung over the lost colony's snowy wastes. As they navigated a narrow, ice-slicked pass, a colossal structure emerged from the swirling snow, a fortress of black ice and jagged obsidian spires, impossibly large and foreboding. It clawed at the perpetually overcast sky, its dark outline a chilling contrast to the pristine white landscape. "Well, that's definitely an ancient structure," Red whispered, his usual jovial tone replaced by a note of genuine awe and dread. "And judging by the sheer size of it, that's not just an outpost. That's a capital." Suddenly, from the fortress's highest battlements, a single, immense figure launched itself into the sky. Its wings, vast and leathery, beat with slow, powerful strokes, easily dwarfing the largest wyverns. Even from this distance, they could discern a crown-like adornment on its head, and its form exuded an aura of ancient, malevolent power. "The king," Swa breathed, his eyes narrowed. "The Vampire King. This isn't just an empire, Red. It's a monarchy." Before they could fully process the sight, the ground beneath them trembled. A series of piercing roars erupted from the frozen forest ahead. From the tree line burst a pack of creatures, unlike any they had ever seen. They resembled massive Arctic wolves, but their fur was the color of fresh blood, their eyes glowed with an internal, icy blue light, and their fangs were impossibly long and sharp, tipped with what looked like frozen venom. "New wild dinosaurs, Swa," Red yelled, drawing his trusty assault rifle. "And they look like they're fresh out of a nightmare." Frostbite, sensing the threat, let out a guttural roar, challenging the approaching creatures. The blood-red wolves, unperturbed, charged with terrifying speed. "All right, Frostbite, to battle," Swa commanded, drawing his sword. "Red, cover me. We need to push through." The fight was brutal and short. Frostbite, with its immense power, quickly dispatched several of the new predators, but their numbers and ferocity were astounding. Swa and Red fought with desperate coordination, their weapons cutting through fur and bone, until the remaining creatures, disoriented by Frostbite's sheer might, snarled and retreated back into the snowy woods. Panting, Swa looked at Red. "We need to reevaluate our strategy. These creatures, they're far more dangerous than anything we've faced. And the king up there," Red added, gesturing to the distant fortress, "he's not going to be happy we just wiped out his guard dogs or whatever those things were." They found a sheltered cave system, partially hidden by a frozen waterfall, a few hours later. It was cold, but offered natural defenses and a much-needed reprieve from the relentless wind. "This is it," Swa stated, rubbing his gloved hands together. "Our staging ground, our fortress, our bulwark against the Vampire King." They immediately began to set up. Red, despite the biting cold, started meticulously carving out sections of the ice and rock to create a defensible entrance. Swa, with his understanding of advanced engineering, began to plan their infrastructure, prioritizing heat, shelter, and, most importantly, defenses. "We need heating units, Red," Swa said, sketching furiously in the snow with a stick. "And heavy gates. And turrets, lots of them. And maybe some experimental weaponry." Red chuckled, though there was a serious glint in his eyes. "Experimental weaponry for a Vampire King and his icy monstrosities? I like your style, Swa. First things first, though, let's get some proper walls up. Something to keep those frosty fangs out." Days melted into weeks, marked by the constant hum of generators, the clang of tools, and the roar of Frostbite patrolling their perimeter. They established a sophisticated system of insulated shelters, greenhouses for food, and, most crucially, a robust automated turret defense grid powered by tech generators. They tamed some of the local, albeit terrifying, fauna, a few massive woolly mammoths for resource gathering and a nimble-horned ice raptor for scouting. "This little guy," Red said, patting the ice raptor's head, its breath pluming in the cold air, "can track anything in this snow. He'll give us a heads up if His Majesty decides to pay a visit." Swar, calibrating the targeting systems of a newly installed tech turret, nodded. "Good. We need every advantage. They may have ancient power, but we have ingenuity and advanced technology." One frigid evening, as the moons of the Ark cast an eerie, pale light over the snowy wastes, Swar stood on the reinforced battlements of their newly fortified base. In the distance, the black ice fortress of the Vampire King glowed with a chilling internal light, a silent challenge across the frozen expanse. "He's still there," Swar murmured, his hand resting on the smooth, cold metal of the turret. "Watching, waiting for us to make a move." Red joined him, a newly forged tech rifle slung over his shoulder. "Let him watch. We're not just building a base, Swar. We're building a resistance. And when we're ready, we'll pay him a visit of our own." Swar looked at Red, a determined glint in his eyes. "A visit, Red? I like the sound of that. But first, let's make sure our welcoming committee is fully prepared." The next morning, the sun struggled to break through the perpetual gloom, casting long, stark shadows across the lost colony. Swar and Red, a renewed sense of purpose driving them, continued to strengthen their fortress. The Vampire King might rule this frozen land for now, but Swar and Red were here to challenge that dominion, one well-placed turret and one daring plan at a time. The wind howled across the frozen tundra of the lost colony, but inside the high-tech fortress of Swar and Red, the air was thick with the hum of machinery and the restless energy of a war council. They were no longer mere survivors scrounging for berries, they were commanders. The fortress, the Frost Citadel. What started as a cave behind a frozen waterfall had evolved into a sprawling tech-tier stronghold. Defense, a double-layered perimeter of vacuum-sealed metal walls topped with automated tech turrets that glowed with a rhythmic blue light. Infrastructure, a massive industrial forge roared 24/7, churning out obsidian-tipped ammunition and reinforced armor. The war room Swar stood over a holographic map of the Vampire King's obsidian castle, marking the flight paths of the leathery bat minions. The army of the north? In the courtyard below, Red was inspecting their greatest achievement, a stable of mutated war beasts bred specifically for the siege. 1. The Vanguard, a pack of high-level Uteranus, their feathers thick and white, ready to roar courage into their allies and terror into the vampire thralls. 2. The heavy hitters, 6 Rexes, clad in tech saddles that provided both armor and plasma cannons. 3. The specialized unit, a flight of snow owls for rapid healing and thermal vision to spot the vampires if they tried to turn invisible in the mist. The strategy... "They think the cold is their ally," Red said, slamming a fresh power cell into his tech rifle. "But we brought the sun with us." Swar pointed to the castle's main spire on the hologram. "The Vampire King doesn't fight like a beast. He's tactical. He'll use the wild zone predators to soften us up before he even leaves his throne. We hit the gates with the Rexes, while you and I lead the aerial assault on the balconies." The call to arms. Swar walked to the edge of the battlements and looked out at the jagged black silhouette of the enemy castle. He adjusted his fur-lined tech helmet, the HUD flickering to life, highlighting the thermal signatures of the monsters waiting in the dark. "Red," Swar called out over the comms. "It's time. The king has ruled this colony long enough." Red mounted his lead Rex, Bane, and checked his blade, a high-durability sword infused with element. "I've been waiting for this since we landed in the snow. Let's go show that empire what happens when they face a couple of survivors." With a deafening roar from the Uteranus that shook the very foundations of the ice, the gates of the Frost Citadel swung open. The army marched out in a sea of steel and fur, their eyes fixed on the dark spires in the distance. The war for the lost colony had officially begun. Would you like me to write the final battle scene between Swar Red and the Vampire King? The sky over the lost colony turned a bruised purple as the two armies collided at the base of the obsidian spire. The air was filled with the shriek of vampires and the thunderous mechanical roar of tech-saddled Rexes. "The breach? Rexes, hold the line!" Red bellowed over the radio. Below, the heavy hitters smashed into the castle's outer gates. The Vampire King's wild zone predators, the blood-red wolves, poured out of the shadows like a living tide. They were met with a wall of plasma fire. Red, perched atop Bane, swung his Rex's head in a wide arc, the sheer force of the bite snapping a wolf's icy neck in seconds. "Gate is down," Red shouted. "Swa, you're clear for the spire." The ascent. Above the chaos, Swa ignited his tech leggings, boosting through the freezing mist. Behind him flew a squadron of snow owls, their wings leaving trails of frost. Vampire knights, winged humanoids in ancient, ornate armor, dived from the balconies. Swa didn't flinch. He drew his tech rifle, the shots ringing out in rhythmic pulses of blue energy that knocked the knights out of the sky. He slammed onto the king's high balcony, the stone cracking under his boots. Facing the king, the throne room was a cathedral of ice and bone. At the far end sat the Vampire King. He stood nearly 10 feet tall, his skin the color of marble and his eyes 2 pits of smoldering crimson. He didn't use a sword. He held a staff of pure element that hummed with a dark, corrupted frequency. "You bring machines into a land of gods," the king's voice echoed, a cold vibration in Swa's skull. "We bring progress," Swa replied, bracing his shield, "and your reign just hit its expiration date." The king moved with a blur of speed. He was a shadow, appearing instantly in front of Swa. The staff crashed against Swa's tech shield, the impact sending a shockwave that shattered the stained glass windows of the hall. The final strike. Outside, Red saw the explosion of energy from the tower. "Bane, stomp!" He cleared the last of the guard and vaulted off his Rex, using his own jetpack to scream toward the balcony. He arrived just as the king pinned Swa against a pillar, the dark staff glowing for a finishing blow. "Hey, your majesty," Red yelled, tossing a C4 remote detonator he'd rigged to a cluster of element shards. "Catch." The king looked up, distracted for a split second. It was all the opening they needed. Swa used his tech gauntlet to deliver a powered uppercut, shattering the king's marble jaw. Red landed behind him, plunging his element-infused sword through the king's cape and into his back. The king let out a piercing, inhuman scream. His body began to crack, brilliant white light leaking through the fissures in his skin. The corruption that fueled the lost colony was overloading. "Get back!" Swa grabbed Red by the harness, and they both ignited their boosters, diving off the balcony just as the top of the spire detonated in a silent, blinding flash of pure element. The aftermath. As the dust settled and the remaining vampires fled into the dark, Swa and Red stood in the snow watching the obsidian spire crumble. The wild zone predators were retreating. Without the king's influence, the blood-red wolves were just animals again. Red wiped black ichor from his visor and looked at the dawn finally breaking over the horizon, a true golden sun. "So," Red panted, leaning against his Rex. "What's next? I hear there's a desert biome 3 islands over that needs some civilizing." Swa looked at the ruins, then at their victorious army. "Let's finish building this place first, Red. We're not just survivors anymore. We're the lords of the colony. Would you like me to describe the new base they built?"